Good afternoon. We're here at Meldon Law and Friends. I'm Kerry Meldon, a partner and attorney with Meldon Law, and I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Adrian Lewis, who's a very special guest. We're very excited to have him in the studios today. This is our 71st episode of Meldon Law and Friends, which is absolutely incredible. We've been working on this show since COVID, and Jeffrey, who usually hosts the show, is in Colorado. So I'm taking over as a guest host today. And I spoke to Jeffrey earlier. He was about to hit the slopes in Steamboat with his brother, Bob, my uncle. And he wanted to tell everybody have a great Tuesday and that we're really happy to have Dr. Lewis. And later on, Peter Rothfuss from Audacy is going to be coming in. So we're at Spurrier's. We're live here. This is the first Tuesday that Spurrier's is open for dinner. So if anyone out there is listening and wants to come down there and say hello, just come on by. I'll be here around 5 o'clock, so I'll be able to meet you in person. Without further ado, let's introduce our first guest, Dr. Adrian Lewis. Adrian, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
It is my privilege, Gary. It's wonderful to be here.
So Dr. Lewis is a very special person. He's opened up probably, I think, the preeminent medical clinic in North Central Florida. And how many locations of your medical clinic do you have, Dr. Lewis?
We now have 5. Gainesville is our headquarters. We opened just over actually now 18 years ago. And it was kind of a unique clinic because I'm a family physician trained at UF 40-something years ago in family medicine, and I took care of a lot of sports injuries because I was an athlete. My wife Sue's a physical therapist, and she took care of all kinds of injuries. And then maybe 20 years ago, we were involved in bluntly a horrendous car wreck on I-75 that somebody rode us off the highway, and we flew 84 foot in the air at 70 miles an hour and hit the concrete median head on. So I'm just grateful to be alive and grateful to be here. And so Medig was formed about 18 and a half years ago as a way of combining care for folks that have been injured in vehicle accidents with the medical team and the physical therapy team working together under the same roof with kind of common respect, mutual respect for each other, taking care of folks who've gone through situations similar to ours. And then we've expanded, as people have asked us to, into other areas in North Central Florida. So we have a clinic in Ocala, Lake City, Chiefland, and Stark. So kind of Gainesville is our hub, and then at 45 minutes in every direction we have a clinic. It's staffed by similar people, the same training. I train the entire and oversee the medical team. My wife Sue, the physical therapy team. So we do the training and we do the oversight as well as take care of patients directly ourselves.
And Dr. Lewis, you've been in Gainesville for quite some time. How long have you and your family been here in Gainesville?
Thank you, Kerry, for saying quite some time. It's been since 1980.
Wow. So you're a true Alachua County resident.
Absolutely.
And where did you come from originally?
I came from Cape Town, South Africa, which is where I grew up and went to medical school there. My family was from there. We left there because of we didn't agree with the policies of the government at the time. And so we left and had no idea we were coming to Gainesville. We bought a round-the-world airline ticket, which was quite common back then, and we just kept stopping at different places and ended up here. It's a story that would take multiple segments to tell. It's hysterically funny, and we, after the residency program, I thought, we'd move somewhere else. We were from Cape Town, which has mountains and oceans, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So when we came to the U.S., we said, as long as we're close to mountains and the ocean, we'll stay there. So we end up in Gainesville. It's not exactly close to either, but we've got at least the oceans on either side, an hour and a half away, and mountains 6 hours away. But we were thrilled to be here. We've had our 2 children were born in the hospitals here. All of our grandchildren, we have 6 of them, so we're locked in. We've been here a long, long time.
Yeah, Medical Injury Group, otherwise known as Medig, and it's spelled M-E-D-I-G, if for those listeners out there. So it's Medig. is a family business. And in fact, I've been treated there myself, and I'm always treated like family. Our clients love going to Medig. They've never had a doctor treat them as carefully as they do when they go to Medig. And over and over again, whenever we handle a client's case and they go see Dr. Lewis, they are always so appreciative of the type of care that they give our clients. So I appreciate that, Adrian.
Well, thanks, Kerry. And look, it was set up to serve people, and again, unfortunately, medicine today, with all of the rules and regulations, and a lot of practices are owned by hospitals and major groups. The kind of family-owned practice where you get one-on-one service is not common any longer, just because of the economies of how the medical system has gone. So, our son, our oldest son, Andrew, has worked at Medig since he was 16 years old, and he's now 30. He's now 30, mid-30s, with 3 children of his own, and he's our CEO. He runs the company.
Andrew does a great job. What an impressive person. We'll have to get him on the show as well.
Yeah, he jokingly says we work for him. So, and I guess in the reality we do, but we really work for the folks who we're blessed to serve, and we passionately. We're both, my wife and I, are 67, and bluntly, to be honest, we don't need to be working. We want to, because it's a wonderful joy to make a difference in somebody's life. And that's what we enjoy doing.
How many total employees do you staff now? Do you have a number? Do you know?
Yeah, well, it's 42 at the moment, and that obviously includes all the clinics. And our corporate headquarters in Gainesville takes care of a lot of the corporate type situations as well. So it's much larger.
Incredible. And you were telling your story about being in the horrific car accident. And one of the things that you're able to do, which is absolutely outstanding, is treat people who've been injured as a result of car accident with the car accident insurance. They're able to get that type of really intensive, complete care that they otherwise wouldn't get because of the nature of how car and auto insurance works in the state of Florida.
Right. So, I think, I don't want to be disrespectful to any of my colleagues, but it's kind of something you either got to be all in or you should probably not do it. It's complex. There's, medical, and there's legal, and there's insurance, and there's documentation, and things that are different. As a family physician in Gainesville for the first 20 years of my life, medical life, I probably saw 5 to 6 patients a year that were in automobile accident injuries. And the number we see today is, very large. And so when you do something a lot of times and you're passionate about it, you're going to get good at it, whether it's swinging swinging a golf club or playing the piano or whatever it is that you love to do. And we love to help people injured in car accidents, and so we should, over the years, have got good at something we do this often.
Well, good is an understatement. The first time you go in and you see a specialist over at Medig, you're going to be looked at from your head all the way down to your toes, and the amount of special care that they show every single individual client and patient that they have is, to me, what makes it a special place. And I know you have a lot of repeat customers that want to continue to treat. I've had people been upset they got better because they know that Dr. Lewis does such a great job that they'll continue to be in the utmost health, because they're not a chiropractic clinic. They do physical therapy, and they work on getting you back to your optimal self. And sometimes even beyond that, in certain circumstances, you guys are able to pull off miracles.
Well, I think this scenario will be is we're passionate. Our goal is to have intense, coordinated care with passion and empathy for a period of time. The average time a patient spends with us, if they don't need surgery, is 3 to 4 months maximum. We don't believe in ongoing care becoming dependent upon us. We want you to focus, get this thing taken care of, move on with the rest of your life. And, obviously, we also, in addition to taking care of the injuries, we're there to help you emotionally through the process because, I think about a third to a half of our team of 40 have had car accidents themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So they understand what it feels like. And you really, I hate to use this word, you feel violated. I remember our home was broken into once, and that feeling of violation. And you feel violated, like you're in the safety of your vehicle or on a motorcycle, and you're minding your own business, and somebody, due to carelessness, which we've all been guilty of at some time or other, so and then you have a situation which could have a permanent brain injury for the rest of your life. You could have severe ongoing pain in your spine somewhere, or have to have shoulder surgery. It's a very difficult thing. Folks struggle as much emotionally as they do physically. And we understand that, and we have once a month, we have 4 hours of training. We shut every clinic down, which bluntly costs a lot of money, and we come together and we go through training of personal growth training, team, how to read people's body language so we can work out when somebody's maybe frustrated, upset, needs to be pulled aside, to be encouraged. So that's, it doesn't happen by accident that people feel welcomed. It's because we work very hard to create that environment, because we know you heal better if you feel that somebody's actually taking a genuine interest in you, that you're not just a number or whatever. And so, that's part of what we do.
Well, living in South Florida for a few years, I was in Fort Lauderdale, opening another firm of another branch of Meldon Law, which is still down there. So for any listeners out there in South Florida, feel free to give us a call at 1-352-373-8000, and we'll get you situated. But one of the things I noticed is that the providers generally in South Florida, not all of them, but a lot of them, don't have that type of kindness and sincere interest in their client, in their patients, and some of them were my clients, and that was tough to deal with, because a lot of the times these people's lives are turned upside down, and they genuinely just want to get back to where they were before the accident, and it takes a lot of not only just physical help, but also emotional support, as Dr. Lewis mentioned. Now, one of the really cool things about Medig is that it has offices in Lake City, Gainesville, Ocala, and even in Chiefland and Stark. So people are able to get this incredible care anywhere that they're located in North Central Florida, which I really applaud you for taking that chance and giving people out in sometimes rural areas the ability to have that top treatment.
Sure. Most of the time, if somebody lives in Chiefland or west of Chiefland, maybe on the coast, on the Gulf, they won't. They'll come to see the doctor once or twice, but they're not going to come to physical therapy twice a week for 2 months, because they just won't. The cost of gas, the time, and all the inconvenience.
In terms of coming to Gainesville to go get physical therapy, they need somewhere they can go.
Somewhere locally.
Yes.
They'll come once a month for the medical visit, but to be seen twice a week. Our visits are 1 hour, which is almost unheard of for an outpatient clinic, because the injuries are complex. I remember doing a survey once on our own patients. The average number of body parts injured in an accident of the patients we see is 8.
Wow.
Sports injuries was easy, because somebody would come in with a shoulder injury or a knee or this or that, but it's usually only one injury. And so you need time. Our initial medical visit, is 2 hours.
Well, when we come back, we're going to a break. I want to talk about one unique type of injury that's come to the forefront of medicine.
Sure.
And I know you know a ton about it, so I'm looking forward to the second segment. Stay tuned.
We are here at the University of Florida, where Albert and Alberta are competing in the Gator penalty shootout. Albert is ready to stop the shot at all costs. What a disaster! Luckily, Meldon Law is the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. If you have suffered any injury, do not worry, because Meldon Law is going to help you with your recovery. Meldon Law doesn't back down until they reach their goal!
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, We haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Hello, this is attorney Kerry Meldon with Meldon Law, and we're here at Meldon Law and Friends, our weekly podcast. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Adrian Lewis. Dr. Lewis, thank you again for agreeing to come in and be a guest at our podcast. We're very honored to have you here today.
It's my privilege, Kerry, very much so.
And we had a great introduction. I loved hearing about what the type of care, the type of treatment that you try to give every single patient at Medig and the 5 locations that you currently have in North Central Florida. And what I can tell you is if you go, you'll see that it's not just all talk, that Medig walks a walk, that you're going to get incredible individualized treatment to get you back on your feet. But one of the more unique injuries that have come to the forefront of medicine in the past, I'd say 10 to 15 years, is what we commonly refer to as traumatic brain injury. You may hear us refer to it as TBI, which stands for traumatic brain injury.
Yep.
And obviously, that's a big topic. What are your thoughts on traumatic brain injuries, first of all? Like, how did you get interested in them?
Well, first of all, I was an athlete in multiple sports. Second of all, the term that's used commonly for folks that are not in the medical field is concussion. So if you hear the term concussion, and I think it's mainly been in the NFL, over the last 10 years perhaps, where, advocates of safety for the players and the understanding of the injuries that are occurring because they're having repetitive, head trauma over and over again. And then the latest, the targeting rule, for those of you that are football fans, was to try and prevent the whiplash-type injury that occurs. So over traumatic brain injury, the main reason it's suddenly become a topic is because we had no way to diagnose it until recently. So let me tell you just very briefly what it is, if I can. So basically, in any situation where suddenly your head jerks on your neck, it could be a slip and fall where you trip. I mean, you could literally trip on the sidewalk, you could trip in your house, and your head suddenly kind of violently jerks. Or it could be any kind of sport. It could be football, it could be boxing, it could be a horrible situation like an assault, if you're assaulted. Or for us, it's very common in automobile accident injuries. It's often called whiplash, where the head suddenly jerks on the neck, and inside your skull, which is hard, it's bone, is a very, very soft brain. And the brain's like jello. And so literally, you have a soft brain hitting a hard skull, and that's going to lead to injuries. And that's going to lead to symptoms. And until recently, which will come in maybe in a little bit later, we'll talk as to why are we able to diagnose this now. But in the past, if you had an MRI scan of your brain, or a brain surgeon had looked inside of your brain with, I don't know if you've ever seen those operating microscopes, where they have like glasses and little telescopes on them. They literally cannot even see the injuries with a microscope. So this was an invisible injury until mainly 5 to 6 years ago. So if we have time, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let me talk very quickly about some of the symptoms for folks who maybe don't know what a TBI symptoms are like. There's non-specific ones. What I mean by that is they're not focused on the brain only. If you have a brain injury, you can have them, but you can have them from other things, say in a car wreck. I mean, I'll talk about that because that's what I'm focused on. So, for instance, you can have a whole bunch of, you can have headaches, you can have nausea, sensitivity to light or sound, you can be irritable, sad, drowsy, a change in sleep pattern, or anxiety.
So all of those, a lot of different types of symptoms that could be indicative of TBI.
but those are non-specific. What I mean by that is they can be from a head injury, but you can also, for instance, get anxiety because you're worried about, am I going to be able to work, and how am I going to take care of my kids, and am I going to be able to enjoy the rest of my life? Not difficulty with sleeping can be because you have a brain injury or you hurt, and you can't sleep because you're in pain. So those non-specific ones are important, but not nearly as important as the specific ones. And we call them cognitive, which is just fancy for brain function. There's 5 symptoms we ask every single new patient in that 2-hour interview. And I'm going to read it just because, we literally read them. All of the medical team read the same questions, and they go like this. Mental fogginess, fuzzy-headed, feeling like you've got a cloud. If you've ever had too much alcohol, it's kind of like a hangover feeling. Difficulty making a decision. Okay, this is kind of funny, and one of my patients gave me permission to share this. So this is a broke student, which I used to be when I was a student. Most students are broke. So he had 2 meals in his refrigerator, leftover pizza and leftover non-pizza. That was it. It was leftover from something, because he didn't go shopping much. And he said, normally when I'm hungry, I just would open the refrigerator, and I'd automatically pick one or other immediately. And he said, now I open it, the refrigerator, I stare, and it'll take me 2 minutes to decide which of the 2 meals I'm going to eat that night. Difficulty making decisions. Yeah. Difficulty concentrating, like you're all over the place. If you've ever heard the term ADD, or attention deficit disorder, it's like you don't finish one sentence or one thought and you already jumped onto the next one. And this is the presumption you never had these problems beforehand. They only come on after the accident. Brain working in slow motion. I ask you a simple question, like when's your birthday, or what's the name of your spouse, or how old is your grandson, and you'll kind of, you have to think really hard to come up with the answer, because your brain is not functioning at the normal speed that it should be. And lastly, difficulty remembering new information. It's like you'll walk into a room and you'll blank out, like, why am I here? Why am I in this room? And then you'll leave the room, and 2 seconds later you'll remember, and you'll go back. Where are my keys? Where my cell phone? The 2 necessities of life, you can't remember where they are. Those 5 questions, if you answer yes to 1, 2, 3, 4, or all 5 of them, and you've never had them before the accident, and in the accident your brain, which is soft, hits your hard skull, and soon after the accident, maybe a few hours or maybe a few weeks, and that is directly related to a traumatic brain injury from that accident. The only reason sometimes there's a delay in you recognizing it, because if you're in a lot of pain, pain overrides noticing these changes.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So, when you get into an accident, does your head have to hit something inside the vehicle in order for there to be a TBI?
That is a phenomenal question, and the answer is absolutely not. The vast majority of our patients, the head does not hit the steering wheel or the windshield. It may hit the back of the headrest, but the sheer sudden jerky motion, like literally you can trip and fall and not hit your head on the ground and have a traumatic brain injury. So in fact, it's very, very common for your head not to hit any part of the inside of the car, and you can have a traumatic brain injury that can be significant.
And I have a follow-up question to that. So if you talked about a concussion being synonymous with TBI previously, but now that we're learning more about it, there's actually been a lot more detailed diagnosis with regards to TBI.
Yep.
Do you have to have a concussion in order to have a TBI, and that includes loss of consciousness?
No. Not at all. In fact, the vast majority of our patients that have TBI, and let me make it clear, I'm not going to go over exact numbers of how many people we see, but I personally have seen 7,000 patients with traumatic brain injury in the last 18 years. That's how common it is. 100,000 in one medical practice seeing nothing but automobile accident. And I would say ones that have lost consciousness, less than 10% of those. So the vast majority don't lose consciousness and don't hit their head against anything, but they have TBI that can be very significant and can even be a very significant permanent brain injury.
And once it's diagnosed, what do you do next?
Well, the diagnosis just very quickly. So the reason we can diagnose it now, and I'll be very quick with this, is we now have super fancy software programs. If you did a regular brain MRI scan 10 years ago, you'd see nothing. For 35 years, I do them and see nothing. And the patients are thinking they're crazy, and I'm beginning to wonder if I've got any medical skills. But now there are fancy software programs that literally can show the exact injuries, which are torn microarteries, damaged nerves, or shrinkage of the brain. And we don't have time to go over the details of those. But these are absolutely diagnostic, irrefutable, can't argue about it. So we now for sure know that this is an injury that came from an accident, especially if you never had these symptoms before.
And if you have been diagnosed with TBI, does that mean you have to have brain surgery?
Oh, goodness, no, not at all.
Okay.
In fact, I don't think there is any brain surgery. Remember, the brain surgeon can't even see the TBI findings, so there's nothing for them to operate on.
So what would you do in terms of treating the patient who has been diagnosed with TBI?
Well, the good news is 60 to 80% of the symptoms are going to go away on their own in the first 6 months. It's a bruise. It's a brain bruise, just like a bruise anywhere else on your body, and there's not very much that we actually do to it. We assist it, speed it up a little bit, but so the majority of folks are going to get well on their own. For the 10 to 20% who have a permanent brain injury, you've got two situations. One is you treat the symptoms, the anxiety, the depression, the difficulty with sleep. Those can be treated with counseling and with medications. And then there's something called neurocognitive training, where you're literally training the brain to think and process around the areas that are injured.
Wow.
And that's very new. And I got to be honest, at this point, we have focused in the last 5 years, not us, I mean the whole field, on the diagnosis, because until you can diagnose something, you have no idea how to treat it. So now we know what the problem is. Now we're working on the fine-tuning ways to fix it. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I expect major breakthroughs in the treatment area. At the moment, we've had our aha major breakthrough in the diagnosis area, which means we can at least tell you why you feel the way you feel. You're not crazy. This is not Alzheimer's that's going to get worse, or brain cancer. This is from the accident. And I literally will tell the patients their symptoms from the beginning, and they look at me like, how do you know? Like you almost been inside my head.
Yep.
Well, I've heard it 7,000 times, but the symptoms are very predictable. And the treatment part, we're still in the earlier phase of that. You'll have to get me back in a year or two, and we'll do an update.
Absolutely. Well, we're ending in a few seconds with our first segment. Dr. Lewis, that was outstanding. We're going to have to get you back here to talk more about everything that you do, because it's a lot more complicated than what he led on. But it was a great time having you here. Thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down. The Gator Nation will be the first to tell you that in all kinds of weather, we all stick together. which is why Meldon Law is honored to be the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. We hope you never find yourself the victim of a serious accident, but if you do, our team is here for you. Gators won't back down from a fight, and neither do we.
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. Look what you have done to my truck.
Excuse me, it's your fault, it's not my fault.
Yes, it is your
No,
fault.
it's not, no,
I am
it's not.
calling Jeffrey Meldon from Meldon Law.
So I'm gonna call Jeffrey, my husband.
Meldon Law, this is Jeffrey speaking.
Jeffrey!
This crazy lady here,
honey.
this crazy lady here might...
New client?
Yes, but this one might be a little tricky. We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
We are here at the University of Florida, where Albert and Alberta are competing in the Gator penalty shootout. Albert is ready to stop the shot at all costs. What a disaster! Luckily, Meldon Law is the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. If you have suffered any injury, do not worry, because Meldon Law is going to help you with your recovery. Meldon Law doesn't back down until they reach their goal.
And we're back here at Meldon Law and Friends. This is attorney Carrie Meldon. I'm guest hosting for Jeffrey today, who's in Colorado skiing. He's having a great time, and we're wishing him the best health. I talked to him earlier, and he was in great spirits, and he said, have fun at the podcast, and I told him that we always do. So we're happy to be here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point in Gainesville, Florida. For those listeners out there that don't know about Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, it's a fabulous farm-to-table restaurant. It's open now Tuesday through Sunday. In fact, today is the first Tuesday that it's opened up. So we're starting to see people congregate at the bar, which is kind of cool because we're in the podcast room. Yeah. And we got all the helmets and all the other cool stuff. It's like a museum here. So please feel free to stop by anytime Tuesday through Sunday. They'd love to feed you and let you take a look at all the cool memorabilia. So today we have a really special guest, a friend of ours named Peter Rothfuss from Audacy. So Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carrie.
And we're really happy to have you here today. Peter, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit, about what Audacy is first of all?
Sure. Well, Audacy is. We recently went through a rebranding last year. We were formerly known as Entercom Communications. Up until about 3 years ago, we were the fourth largest radio broadcasting company in the country. We had 130 radio stations in about 25 markets. Wow. About 3.5 years ago, we acquired all of the CBS radio properties throughout the country, and that launched us into the number 2 spot for over-the-air radio broadcasting, and we have 250 radio stations in 50 markets, most of the larger markets, where we're reaching in the bigger markets 90% of the listening population there. So it's a significant company, publicly traded. It's about 50 years old. Interestingly enough, Gainesville, Ocala was the first radio market that they entered into. Joe Field did many, many years ago.
Wow.
And
what are some of the stations that people can listen to that?
Well,
throw a few out there.
Interesting. Well, we own stations in Boston. We are the affiliate of the Boston Red Sox.
Wow.
We have radio stations in New York City, Los Angeles. We are in all of the big markets. I have a whole list of them here that I could go through, but
what about locally?
We have WKTK 98.5 KTK.
Great.
We have 97.3 The Sky, as you know.
We love The Sky.
Love The Sky.
Meldon Law is big on The Sky and
Yes.
KTK.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we have a joint sales agreement with the University of Florida. They own 2 radio stations, and we do all of the sales for them. And it's 103.7 The Gator, along with ESPN, which is obviously the flagship for all the Florida Gator sports. So
Cool.
we have quite a great partnership with them. We're very appreciative of it. All three of the FM stations are full service Class C 100,000 watt or 50,000 watt stations. We cover 13 counties here in North Central Florida, and then we also own stations in Orlando as well, and Miami here in Florida. So, it's a big company. It's a great company to work for, frankly.
Let's talk a little bit about your individual background. When did you first get into advertising?
Well, it's very interesting. My dad was a broadcaster. It's very hard for me to talk about my career without talking about my father.
Let's hear. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, he's really cool. He's actually written 2 books in the last couple of years, accounting for his professional life. He spent the first part of his career on the radio. He started in small market radio and ended up after just a handful of years being the #1 afternoon guy in Baltimore, Maryland on WCBM, which I believe is a station that we now own in Baltimore. I might be wrong on that, but and he and a good friend of his name is Kirby Confer. My dad's name is Paul Rothfuss. They grew up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. My dad was coming home from college one day and he heard Kirby on the radio and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I got to stop in and see what he's doing." And then Kirby's like, "Well, you should get a job doing this."
Oh, wow.
And the next thing you know, the owner of the radio station popped in and said, "Here, read this news." And the next thing you know, he's on the air, pretty much that evening. And so they really had long-term goals of owning radio stations someday. Kirby also had a paralleling career of on-air and stuff. He kind of got into the sales end and some of the ownership stuff a little earlier, but in 1975, they bought a radio station in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It became explosively successful pretty much overnight, where they actually grew the radio market in Williamsport on the back of their AM/FM radio stations, really. So they surpassed the gross revenues of what the market was doing prior to them getting there. And then they launched a company called Key Market, and Key Market ended up buying AM/FM radio stations throughout the Southeast. Back then, most operators were still working the AM. FM was still sort of an unknown, and they were turning around properties, and they became very successful.
How would they go about doing that? Would they just go to a city and go to the radio station
Well,
and say, "Look, we want to buy you"?
Yes, they got very good at looking at real good opportunities that were being underutilized, frankly. And so they launched brands like KSSN in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is still alive and well. 100,000 watt station in Greenville, South Carolina called WSSL, among others throughout the Southeast was really where they found their success. I got my start as the mascot for their first radio station. I was the WILQ Rooster, and my brother and I, he drove the van, and we did a lot of remotes, and he drove the van, and I dressed up in a chicken costume, and we also were the janitorial service for their first radio station. So that was at the age of 11 or 12. I think I was the Rooster by probably age 13 for about 4 years till we moved south.
When you said you moved south, did you move to Baltimore from Pennsylvania?
No. Well, I was actually born in Baltimore, so we moved from Maryland to Pennsylvania, and then I actually graduated high school in Aiken, South Carolina, because that's where they moved their home office.
Oh, wow. That's really close to where they played the Masters.
Yep, in Augusta. Yep. Yeah. The actual home office was in North Augusta.
Wow. Did you ever get to play Augusta?
I actually did. I worked for one of their radio stations in Augusta called Sunny 105. I'm not sure what it's called now. And they had Media Day every year, about a month after the Masters, right before they closed the golf course down in the summertime. So about the middle of May, what an experience. Like, just an amazing full day. We got to play the par 3, they had lunch, and of course it was about a 7-hour round of golf on the big course because, everybody is trying to be Tiger Woods, and they're not.
Right. Well, they're trying to savor. It's like
and also they're trying to hit these big shots, and they're ending up looking for them in the azaleas and stuff like that. So, and so I got into this business. My brother is also actually a market manager for a different company in Roanoke, Virginia. I got into it after he did, and he started getting successful at sales. So I thought, well, I finished college, and I thought, Why not? My dad owns a big company, and the best
Mm-hmm.
part about my dad is not nepotistic at all. He's like, well, here's some names of people that I know that really weren't necessarily in his company,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of farmed me out. And I ended up in Erie, Pennsylvania, as a young seller.
What were you selling?
I was selling a radio station called Classy 100.
Okay, what was that? A classic?
It was adult contemporary, soft adult contemporary station.
Okay, so when you're that young, and they say sell. What do you have to do? Like,
it was
what's your first?
horrifying.
Yeah, what's your first step?
Well, they quote unquote trained me, and back then there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of training. They basically tell you to go find a client, ask them a lot of questions about their business, and try to put together a commercial that they might buy, and go back and see them. And so I went through about 2 weeks of, it was kind of rudimentary training back then. And the interesting thing, and I think the gang of the other salespeople put me up to this. They sent me, my very first sales call. Well, first of all, I called my dad the night before, and I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm making sales calls tomorrow." He's like, "That's great, son." He said, "Make sure you put on your steel underwear." So I had no idea what he was talking about, because I'm thinking I'm going to be a sales guy and I'm going to be successful.
Everyone's going to love you. You're
And
going
I
to walk
got the
right in.
briefcase, and
Yeah.
I got the suit and tie on, and I'm a handsome young guy, and I'm going to go out and kill it. So I called on a men's store. I don't remember the name of it. And the guy says to me, I walk in, I'm like, "Hi, I'm Peter Rothfuss from Classy 100. And the guy looks at me square in the eyes and he says, "I will never advertise on Classy 100. And I was like, I was startled. I don't think I said anything. I think I went to my car and cried.
Did
frankly.
he have something against Classy 100 or against advertising?
Well, I think I went back to the radio station, and of course, this has been many, many years, so I don't remember the whole thing. But I think all the salespeople were laughing at me because they knew the guy had some kind of a bad experience with the radio station, and they kind of put me up to it. Like, yeah, you got to go see these
you were
guys.
being hazed then.
Kind of, yeah. So, it took me, I think I was 23 or 24, and it's hard to sell really anything to business owners at that age. They're wiser and smarter, and they can spot, a fool a mile away. And so it was good training for me. I didn't end up working really technically for my dad until probably 7 or 8 years later, 7 years later, probably, in Augusta, Georgia.
Okay.
And so, interestingly enough, Audacy. So my dad, and this is also funny. When I got into it, my dad decided he had enough of it because he had other interests. And
When
he
you
wanted,
got into the radio business.
yeah, he sold his
Yeah.
part of the company, and it was a
Okay.
very successful, huge. I mean, it was a giant company.
And when was this?
1986.
Okay, so
So
quite
I
a
get
few
in,
years
and he's
ago.
getting out.
35 years ago. A little
Yeah.
between 30.
Yeah.
almost
So,
30.
interestingly enough, Key Market went on to get purchased by a company called River City Broadcasting.
Okay.
And then River City Broadcasting got purchased by Sinclair, and Entercom bought Sinclair. Entercom, now Audacy, bought Sinclair.
Wow.
In about 2000, I think.
Okay.
So Entercom actually owns stations that my dad and
dad-
Kirby started.
Small world, huh?
Yeah, like Scranton, and I'll get to that one in a minute, but Scranton, Buffalo, Memphis, I think New Orleans, Riverside, California, I believe maybe Sacramento. I might be missing one or two, but so it's interesting that there's this, like, I kind of have blood in this company somehow, and some of those stations are still operating under the same names.
So in the mid 80s, you kind of went and you worked with him. He ended up selling the business. So what happened to you after that?
Well, no, that was right when I started.
Okay.
So I literally got in it, and he was kind of getting out.
Yeah.
Although he did buy some other stations and stuff later on, and that's when I went to work for him. So, wow, he's actually been an owner of radio properties 3 different times. Wow. Interestingly enough, so.
So you're back, but when you stopped the story, you were back in Augusta.
Yeah.
Okay, so where did you go from there?
Augusta, I went to, I was a young 28-year-old guy, and me and a buddy of mine thought we were the smartest people on earth, and so we put an ad in Broadcasting Magazine telling, please recruit us to run your radio station, and we ended up in, of all places, Muskegon, Michigan, Whitehall, Michigan, actually.
Okay, why of all places? I've never even heard of it.
Because that was the only guy that answered our ad. Well, actually,
What
probably
part
have,
of Michigan is that?
Well, okay, well, this is here's Michigan.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Okay.
Right on Lake Michigan.
It's right on Lake Michigan.
Muskegon is known for, you might remember the Alka-Seltzer Plus cold medicine commercials, where they would show cities in the Northeast and people sneezing, and Muskegon, Michigan, and Chicago, Illinois, and people up here
I
rely
don't
on
remember,
it.
but I'll take your word
Well,
for
the
it.
Muskegon,
Peter.
Michigan was one of the names of it. Anyway, we were operating. My dad told me after the fact, a couple years later, he said, "I didn't have the heart to tell you that it was a mission doomed for failure." So thankfully he didn't, because we really,
Well, it was
we
a great
really grew.
experience.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew a lot, and then from there I ended up in Scranton, Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
which our company owns those stations, and you might be familiar with one of them, the Froggy 101 brand.
Yeah, of course.
As seen on The Office.
Yes.
So it was 98.5 KRZ and Froggy 101, and also a news.
That's so funny. That's,
yeah.
I've heard of Froggy 101. I couldn't put two and two together, but it was from The Office.
It's a real rate, and my dad and Kirby's company put that thing on the air originally.
Very cool. Well, we'll come back after a break. We'll talk about your journey to Florida.
Awesome, thank you.
All right.
We are here at the University of Florida, where Arbor and Alberta are competing in the Gator penalty shootout. Arbor is ready to stop the shot at all costs. What a disaster! Luckily, Meldon Law is the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. If you have suffered any injury, do not worry, because Meldon Law is going to help you with your recovery. Meldon Law doesn't back down until they reach their goal.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Hello, this is attorney Carrie Meldon, and we're back here at Meldon Law and Friends with our special guest, Peter Rothfuss. We're really happy to have him here. We're here at Spurrier's, and they're actually open for dinner. I can see all the people are dining out there. Peter, you see them out there?
Yep.
It's starting to congregate. Very
There's
cool.
fantastic food here, too.
This is the first time that we've ever had a podcast with a live audience, so
Awesome.
I'm feeling like we're a little special. It's a special episode. It's the 71st episode of Meldon Law and Friends, which is absolutely amazing, because we started during COVID when everything was kind of shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think Jeffrey has missed a week of the podcast. I mean, I've guest hosted a
great.
few times, and so has Chris. But
That's quite
the
a
one
commitment.
thing about Meldon Law is once we start, we never stop.
There
As
you
you
go.
know
That's
from
why I
Law
said
Talk
the word
Live,
commitment. There you go.
we've been doing Law Talk Live at the Sky, which we'll talk about in a little bit, for almost 19 years consecutive. So.
Yep.
Commitment means a lot, and you can't just say you're going to do something and not follow through.
Yep.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. What I want to really talk to you about last time we were in Michigan is, how did you get down to Florida? What brought you to
So I
to
ended
the
up.
state?
I ended up as a seller in Scranton. My wife and I got married in the late '90s. We moved to Orlando, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
in 1999. I was going to get out of media. I swore I'm getting out.
What were you going to do?
Not media.
Okay, fair enough.
And for no reason other than I was like, there's got to be a better way to make a living. But there's not, really, because this is a lot of fun. I guess you can say that about anything. Something is not really greener on the other side. It's just different hard work.
You are very right.
So anyway, I ended up working at Channel 6 in Orlando, the CBS affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
What was really great about that at that time in my life was I was used to small and medium-sized radio markets. Well, at that time, in the year 2000, Orlando was one of the fastest growing cities in the country, along with Vegas. It was TV market ranked number 19. So I went from like small market to like big kind of TV market, and it was a really big deal. Anyway, I was pretty successful as a seller there. They promoted me to a sales manager. Started an ad agency, did all kinds of fun stuff. I handled Jiffy Lube for a while. I had a bunch of stores and up and down the East Coast, and so I ended up getting recruited by this company in 2010, and I ended up back in Scranton as a director of sales. So we really loved Florida, and this opportunity came up as a director of sales here in 2016. Was doing a really good job. Love this company. It's hands down the best broadcasting company I've ever worked for. And my dad's company was really strong, and I worked for him for a little while, and this opportunity came up. My parents had moved to Florida since then, and we're very close with them, and so I wanted to get closer to them as they're aging, and be able to be closer to help take care of them. And so this opportunity came up in 2016, and been doing.
What do you think about Gainesville so far?
I love it. We absolutely. I didn't. When I moved here, I was kind of like, I don't know about Gainesville, and we lived in Winter Park, Florida, and we loved it.
That's a beautiful area too.
But what's really cool is the weather here is so much different than Orlando, and it's hard to believe that. But it doesn't get as hot for as long here, and we get these nice, cooler evenings and nights, and we even get freezes. So we've really liked that because my wife and I both pretty much we spent a lot of time in the Northeast and got used to cold weather. But
you're still close enough to the beach.
It's everything. We have a fabulous restaurant. You have the culture of an unbelievable university and healthcare system, and then I'm kind of a farm boy sort of thing, and I have 6 acres, and I have 2 mini donkeys and some chickens, and so you have the best of both worlds. I call it country meets cosmopolitan, and there's a lot of horses in Ocala, which is obviously the horse capital of the world, and it's kind of really cool. So.
Well, look, obviously you're in Gainesville. Gainesville's like you said, a very unique community that's growing. And as the general sales manager of Audacy, and with someone who's an expert, in advertising and sales, do you ever have an opportunity to work with students or younger people here?
Yeah, we have done some internships in the past. Obviously, COVID shut that down for the last couple of years, and we're kind of I just got promoted to the market manager position. Dick O'Neill retired last year.
Yeah.
Thank you. So last June I started this role. I'm sort of in a rebuilding the thing back together because we sent everybody home, and I'm kind of putting pieces back together, which is good. We're performing well, and so yes, we do internships with the students of the university. And again, we do have a close relationship with them. So that's something we're going to be looking back into for the coming season again.
Now, one of the things that is that our law firm, Meldon Law, is a huge believer in radio, in traditional radio, and radio advertising. One of the things that has come about in the past 10 or 15 years is XM radio, what we commonly refer to as satellite radio. What did you think when that first came on? Were you was Audacy or Intercom back then, was it positioned in that market, or what was the thought?
Positively. I think you have to understand radio is the great survivor of all the mass media. Radio was going to, go out of business when television came on the air. Well, radio adapted. Radio has been one of the most adaptive media options that are out there. And right now, our competitors in the video space are suffering greatly. Radio just surpassed television as the #1 reach medium in the country 3 years ago.
Okay.
We reach 93% of the American population every week. So
cable is getting killed.
All of it. The over-the-air stations, while they still have massive audiences, they're dwindling, and that's causing them problems. So, this with all of the adaptations that we're making, all things audio, hence the name change last year. With our streaming and our podcasting. People, there's a new expression called "no screen is the new screen." The fact that I'm sitting here and we're having a podcast conversation is almost exactly how radio was conceived in the first place.
Wasn't it?
And now they're doing dramas, and they're doing mysteries, and they're doing all kinds of sports content and talk content.
That's a great point.
So the whole space of audio is even greater. We have more options of how and where we listen, and what's so cool is the over-the-air stations have suffered almost not, because we are the ones that are adapting and creating these options for people.
It's really interesting. There's an art to radio that I think sometimes is forgotten. I remember growing up, and a lot of my friends still do this. They would mute the TV and listen to Mick Hubert or whoever the announcer was.
yeah.
You know, they still do it in the North.
They
with,
sure. I'm a Penn
baseball
State.
and-
I'm a
yeah.
Penn State fan, and we do it all the time.
Yeah, so
We don't like the the TV commentators, and we're going
Because
to listen to our guy. Yeah, that's
the
very common.
descriptions,
Of
and,
course.
and the detail and the actual
And the love of
professionalism.
the team. You know,
Yes, it's
It-
a
it comes-
different experience.
it's more fun that way. I totally agree with you.
And so that's kind of something that I've always, when we were growing up, this is funny, I don't know if you know this about Jeffrey, but when we were growing up, we would go to and from Daytona a lot because my mother's family lived in Daytona Beach.
Okay.
So we would travel to and from Gainesville from Daytona, and we would always listen to, on Sundays, we listened to Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, I love it.
On the
Yeah,
radio.
yeah.
And it was these stories,
Yeah.
right? These,
Yep.
and you would hear the creak of the door and the
Yeah,
patter of the
yeah.
hoofs. And I remember as a kid, I loved listening to these stories.
Yeah.
And even though they were recorded probably 30, 40, 50 years earlier,
Yeah.
they were still really fun to listen to back in the 80s
Yep.
and 90s. And like you said, I think there's still a desire for that type of medium.
Well, the power of radio is it's theater of the mind, and it's a one-on-one.
Theater of the Mind is what it was called.
That's exactly what
actually-
it's called.
Yeah,
and
Theater of the
it is
Mind, yeah.
theater of the mind. So, if you ask somebody if they read a book and then saw the movie, which did they like better? It's almost always the book, because they have their own images in their head. So when the power of radio, it's not only that theater of the mind component, but it's also a one-on-one relationship. It's a mass media that's reaching really one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so powerful and you don't need to reach, to have your message conveyed properly is part consistency, like you guys have been, and continuity, which the message is relatively the same. But knowing that everybody's not going to react the same way all the time, and some people's responses are delayed. And so, the power of our medium, and the audio medium in particular, is so profound with all of those components. Now we have the reach, and we have that theater of the mind, and it is our best clients are the ones that use the medium the properly, and that is with consistency and continuity, and it's an investment. It's not I always say to our prospects and clients, I don't have a magic advertising pill, and nobody else does either. So, it is an investment, period.
Peter, we got a couple minutes left. There's two questions I want you to answer for
Okay.
the audience out there. First of all, what type of clients do you think should be contacting Audacy, and how do they contact you?
Oh, wow. Okay, well.
So you don't have much time.
Wow.
So move it through
Okay,
it,
Peter.Rothfuss at Audacy.com.
Yeah.
ROTHFUSS. That's the best way to contact me. Really, anybody that is interested in reaching, for our brands, we position them to reach adults with money. So if you have a business, if you have a service business or a retail business or even an online business, we can help you. And
will you help them with a plan? And
Of
kind
course. We,
sit down with them and explain to them why you do advertising,
Yes.
how you do it effectively, what works and what doesn't.
Of course. Our first step is to go and do a diagnostic. I don't go to sell somebody something. My first point is, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you accomplishing? Why do you need to? Are you going to make a significant enough budget to make it work, investment to make it work? And if it's not designed for success, we're inclined to tell them, it's best to do something other than this.
Will you even help with the creative?
Of course.
Okay, so that's incredible. So
Yeah.
basically, if someone has a business that they really want
Yep.
to promote,
Yep.
and they don't know how to do it, they should just give you a call, at least to talk with you, sit
Correct.
down and say, how do I, how would you
What's
do
the
this
first
if you were
step?
me? Yeah.
Well, the first step is a candid conversation. That's what it is. Let's face it. You have to establish trust and rapport for people to want to do business with you. So, I like to say to people, I look at everybody as a prospect, but I know I'm going to have to go through a process in order to earn their business. So I'm not in a hurry.
That's great. So you don't feel rushed. You're going to
No, I don't want I want them to feel at ease when they're going to make
love
this
that.
investment. For
I
sure.
love that. Well, Peter, we're coming to the end of the show. We could talk for another hour. What an
Yes.
incredible show. We'll have to get you back here to talk
Happy
more.
to do so.
And Jeffrey's going to want to
Awesome.
peel your mind back a little bit.
Awesome.
And we want to get your father back maybe
That
as
would
a
be
guest
fantastic.
as well.
He
because
has two
I want
books.
to talk about his 2 books. We're going to break, but when we come back, we'll the next time we'll talk about his books.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. We'll say adieu for this episode of Meldon Law.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.